All right, greetings everybody. My apologies for all the technical issues. It's just that kind of situation. I apologize in advance if anything happens between now and then, but let me go ahead and get started. My name is Dr. David Fakunle. I'm so honored to be here just to speak for a few minutes about storytelling. Storytelling is what I do no matter what institution you find me in. Storytelling is the name of my game, and I'm grateful that I've been able to use this art and science all over the place. So I just got a few slides to share. I wish I could interact with y'all. That would make this so much better. But you know what? We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it work. So I call this presentation the Lion Side, the utilization of storytelling for transformation in arts and health. And to my backstage crew, if anything happens with my sound, just please let me know. I'll switch to another pair of headphones. We don't need to have any more delays. So let's get into it. Hopefully it lasts long enough for me to tell this story. There was once an elder woman, and every day this elder woman would walk through the forest. That forest was her refuge, her sanctuary. It was where she felt closest to the divine. So she did it every single day like clockwork. She took in the sights, the sounds, the taste, the touch, the smell, all the ambiance of the forest. On this particular pilgrimage, the elder woman came across a stone. And as an elder woman, you could imagine that she's seen many stones in a lifetime. We're talking big stones, small stones, round stones, jagged stones, smooth stones, rough stones, any stone you can imagine, she's seen it. So she knew there was something special, something precious about this stone. So what did she do? She took the stone, she put it in her pouch, and she kept on walking. As she was continuing on her pilgrimage, she came across a young man. And as the young man got closer and closer to the elder woman, she could see with her eyes that this young man was going through some things. She could see the hunger, she could see the thirst, she could see the tiredness, the sleepiness, the pain. She could tell just by looking at him that anything life was dealing this young man, he was coming up on the losing side every single time. When the young man finally got within feet, inches of the elder woman, he begged her, "Ma'am, do you have anything that I can eat? Do you have anything that I can drink? Do you have a place where I can lay my head? Do you have a way to tend to my wounds? Ma'am, can you help me?" And eventually that young man's eyes caught gaze of that stone, that precious stone in the elder woman's pouch. And here's what happened when he did. The thoughts of thirst went away. The thoughts of hunger went away. The thoughts of pain went away. The thoughts of tiredness went away. There was only one thought that occupied his mind. And so he asked the elder woman, "Ma'am, may I have that stone in your pouch?" And without any hesitation, as if she didn't take a single thought, the elder woman went inside of her pouch. She grabbed that precious stone. She gave it to the young man, and she kept walking. And this elder woman did not say a word. So the young man is going in one direction, and the elder woman is continuing on with her pilgrimage. And the young man is holding that stone in his hands and hasn't taken his eyes off of it for 1 second. Because in his mind, that stone makes sure that he's never tired again. That stone makes sure that he's never thirsty again. That stone makes sure he's never hungry again. That stone is the answer to all his prayers, his wishes, his desires, his dreams. But after a while, the young man stopped because he had been in the forest for a long time too. And it was like in that moment, he felt the forest, he smelled it, he heard it, he saw it, he even tasted it. And after a while, that young man ran and caught back up with the elder woman who was still walking. And when he did, this is what he said to her. "Ma'am, I want to give this stone back to you. And in exchange, I want whatever it is inside of you that allowed you to give me this stone so freely." I have told that story, I'm guessing hundreds of times at this point, probably not under the dire circumstances of making sure my microphone still works. And the reason I love telling a story, no matter how many times I've done it, is because it always reminds me of the important lessons of life. We we get caught up in materialism one way or another, and we do our best to minimize it, those of us who realize how problematic materialism can be. And one of the ways that we can be reminded of what's truly important in life is through stories like this, because the precious stones that are most important are the precious stones that exist within all of us. It's our love, it's our generosity, it's our peace, our thoughtfulness, our determination, our perseverance, all those things that we can't quite quantify, but make the difference in the lives that we choose and aim to live. And the precious stone really exemplifies that for me. So when we talk about love and time being two of our greatest teachers, two of our greatest forces, it's absolutely true. We get it in this story with the elder woman who knew what mattered the most. She understood what was valuable from a materialistic standpoint, but when it came down to it, what was most important to demonstrate to that young man who was dealing with his own trauma, and that's a word we all need to be comfortable with, she gave him what he really needed, herself. And that's what I aim to do in my work as a storyteller, as a public health professional, to show that who we are as people, the true ties that bind us together, are exactly what we need, even in the field of public health. So I love to show this collage of pictures because this is yet another reminder of me, for me, of what's most important. And I encourage my audiences to think about, as they tell their stories, demonstrating what's truly important. So yes, I'm a Hopkins trained epidemiologist. I can tell you not a lot of Black kids from East Baltimore get that opportunity, yet, let alone finish. But the other pictures are more important. Being Dorley's husband, being Cruz Matisse's father, being Deborah's son, Taiwo's son, Mary's brother, being an African drummer, and yes, being a Black storyteller. This collage of photos is my brief opportunity to orient my audience to what I want them to know most about me, which is this: I am the product of love. I am the product of time. Time takes its time. Time is a great teacher. And I can tell you that who I am in these pictures, and even who you see right now, is the product of love and time. The love that is cultivated through all these different forms: fatherhood, marriage, brotherhood, being a child, being an artist, being a researcher. Trust me, all products of love and time. So I love to let my audience know what's truly important. David is what's important to David, not just Dr. Fakunle. I can get why that's very sexy, but no, David's what's most important. This woman is also very important. So when we talk about the transformation of arts, culture, and health through storytelling, it started with Mary Carter Smith. I had the chance to meet Mary Carter Smith when I was 9 years old. And as with many stories, this one's very interesting. I listened to her radio show for many years, The Griot for the Young and Young at Heart, at Morgan State University, where I now teach. And I guess of all the stories that I heard from Mary Carter Smith throughout the continent of Africa, the story of the yellow ribbon, look that one up, was the one that I remembered. So much so that I told that story at the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum in Baltimore while Mary Carter Smith was in the audience. And she was impressed by this 9-year-old boy's rendition of the yellow ribbon. And she mentioned me on her radio show. She told the story again. It has a surprise ending. I'm not going to spoil it for you all. She eventually invited me onto the radio show to read stories and ultimately started teaching me the art and science of storytelling. I learned from a giant in Black storytelling. I was one of her last proteges before she transitioned in 2007. I knew it was good to be connected with my culture. I knew it was good to be connected with my ancestry as a proud African. I didn't know that this art and science would completely transform my life in the way that it has. And this is the part where I get emotional. I think about all the years where I've been able to cultivate this art and science, and Mary Carter Smith hasn't been in this incarnation to see it. It makes me sad because I wish I could hug her, kiss her, just tell her in this form, thank you. Thank you for changing my life in such a beautiful way. But I know she's around. I know she's with me everywhere I go. And I make it my effort that anytime I do a presentation on storytelling, I will honor Mary Carter Smith, because in my field of research, we talk about correlation and causality. Mary Carter Smith is my causality. And I say that proudly. And once again, a product of love and time, because if that woman did nothing else, she loved me. She loved me through storytelling as much as anything else. And here's why storytelling is getting the recognition and appreciation that it should have always had, now more than ever. It's a universal art form and a universal science. So although I represent the African oral tradition, storytelling shows up everywhere in our world. Every culture on this planet has some form of expressing narrative. It is not just speaking with our mouths, it's with our hands. As you see, I'm very handsy when I talk. It's with our technology, it's with our cultural traditions. We are telling a story one way or another. And through telling stories, we have our voice. And when we share our voice, there's power. There is a reason that when there is suppression or oppression, we get the suppression of stories. Narratives change, or narratives are isolated, or narratives are heightened more than they should be, because there's a lot of power in the voice that comes through our stories. Just as important as storytelling is story listening. Acknowledging someone's truth, their existence, their reality is a very powerful thing. It's an existential determinant of health. And ultimately, storytelling provides a mutually beneficial exchange. And in this world that seems more divisive than ever, could we not use more mutually beneficial exchanges? Well, storytelling is one that is readily available to all of us. So Solomon Ibn Gabriel said it best. The first step in the acquisition of wisdom is silence. That's listening. The second, listening, even more listening. The third, memory. So you have to remember the story. Practicing, because you can't get better at storytelling without storytelling. And then the fifth, teaching others, which is where I feel so honored and blessed to be with teaching storytelling. So let me give you a little bit of the science of storytelling. Here's what goes into your stories: beginning, middle, end. This is not breaking news. The plot is how we navigate those particular time points, right? From the beginning to the middle and to the end. Think of it like train tracks, a train route, or something like that. Within our stories, we have all these critical elements that can help enhance our message. The title, the characters. So who are we rooting for? Who are we seeing? Whose world are we seeing, and through whose eyes, right? The sceneries, the challenges and the resolutions, because we as human beings, we relate to struggle, and we also relate to overcoming struggle. 3 R's of storytelling: reason, responsibility, and respect. Your story should make sense, whether it's science, art, culture, business, I don't care. If the story don't make sense, it don't make sense. Responsibility. When it comes to the message that you all want to convey, you have a responsibility to do it in a way that your audience will understand. Otherwise, why are you telling the story? Okay. So the audience has its responsibility and the storyteller has its responsibility. Okay. Respect. I shouldn't have to explain respect. We're human beings communicating with other human beings. Respect humanity. I'll put it that way. The 5 tools of storytelling: voice, body, mind, imagination, and connection. We can tell our stories in an infinite number of ways, using our voice, using our body, using our creativity. Ultimately, here's what you want your audience to do. You want them to tap into their own creativity, to think about how they imagine the world that you are painting for them as you tell a story. Connection is ultimately the goal. You want your audience to believe in you as a fellow human being, and vice versa. The connection goes both ways. Again, mutually beneficial. When you get that connection, I can promise you it's easier. I won't say easy, but easier to have the difficult conversations that require the necessary solutions so we can have the world that we all want to live in. Connection is the name of the game in storytelling. And when you can share your truth in an unapologetic and loving way, you can facilitate and cultivate connection just like that. So when we think about storytelling, we want to think about having answers to as many of these questions as possible when we're crafting the story and See, that was what I was worried about. Technology is not being cooperative, but we're going to get through this. All right. So we think about the questions: who, what, where, when, how, why. So just as an FYI, if I go mute, that's because I'm trying to figure out my technological situation. I don't want to cause any unnecessary. All right. The who, what, where, when, and why of our story. Who's in the story? What's the story about? Where does the story take place? When is the story happening? How does the story occur? And why does the story exist? We do the same thing with the telling of our stories. Who's in the story? What's the story? What story is being told? Who's telling the story? Excuse me. What story is being told? Where is the story being told? When is the story being told? How is the story being told? So that allows us to utilize our creativity. There's no one way to tell a story. And why is the story being told? So there's intentionality behind every aspect of storytelling. And the more that we can be intentional in our stories as well, not just the crafting of the narrative, but the telling of the narrative, the better off we will be. So we look at things like narrative, character, structure, tone, emotion, reaction, struggle, and solution as we craft our narrative. Then we look at the telling of that narrative, format. What's the story actually look like? The distribution. How do you get that story out there? Ideal placement and ideal timing. There's a reason I have those in red and bold. I will get to that. You have to be very intentional about your audience. Are you speaking a language that your audience truly understands? What do they get to discover through the telling of your story? How do they relate to the struggle? And how can they pass that story along to others? This is what I mean by ideal placement and ideal timing. I will tell you, as will many other people, the changes in a lot of the discussions that we have around race, systems of oppression, racism, all those aspects, the difficult conversations, are because of the combination of COVID-19 and the lynching of George Floyd. And I say lynching very intentionally. It changed how we saw the reality of the story of Black people in the United States of America in particular, because many of us on that May in 2020 saw a Black man die. That is a very powerful story to tell. That happened at an ideal time when many of us had to be still, and it changed our perspective on so much. So it allowed for this expansion of epistemic justice where we challenge what we consider to be knowledge. DiscoverME, RecoverME is the organization that I started with my mother, where we use the African oral tradition as a healing practice, going into spaces where people are dealing with some manifestation of trauma and creating space where people can tell their unapologetic story. It's not about therapy per se, because we know therapy is a very sensitive word for a lot of people, but it is about healing. It is about acknowledging that everyone has a story to tell, that story has value, and as you explore the totality of your own personal narrative, you can find all these opportunities that showcase and demonstrate the best of your humanity. Even in the grimiest of situations, and I've heard them, you can still find the best in humanity. Story mapping is a way that I've done that with research, giving people working in neighborhoods where we're supposed to find all this information and extract a lot, but actually say, you know what? You tell me what I should know. And you don't have to do it through any methodology that I give you, any crafted methodology that I may have learned from some institution that doesn't reflect your values or reflect who you are as a person. Tell me your story and let's find it on the map. So I'm grateful to Johns Hopkins. I'm grateful to Morgan State University. I'm also grateful to the University of Florida for having these opportunities to show that our indigenous methodologies, our true approaches to sharing information have as much value now in modern public health as they ever have. To me, that's definitely love in time. Okay, if I didn't have people who loved me at these places, I wouldn't have gotten these opportunities. Wound work is another place that has allowed me to cultivate these skills. Founded in '97 by 3 Black women, 3 Black artists who use performing arts to heal Black children, indigenous children, and now all people through theater, through dance, through song, through cultural practices and traditions and rituals. It is a chance to show how love and time sometimes don't need much changing at all, because the same practices and the same traditions from the continent of Africa from hundreds of years ago have as much value and relevance in 2022 as they ever have. And the performing arts that we get to share are just a few examples of that. So here's what it comes down to, being mindful of time. I'm going to keep this on time as much as possible. I've loved this recent example of explaining these terms that we hear a lot, but a lot of people don't really understand what they mean. So using the analogy of shoes, I think is great. So we think about equality, diversity, equity, acceptance, and belonging. Find the shoes that you want. Now, I want everybody to remember this, and now I'm going to switch to this one. I think a lot of people have seen this one before as well. Reality, equality, equity, and liberation. I am unapologetically in the fight for liberation. I want everybody to live lives of their own determination, no matter what that may be. As long as it's to the benefit of society, do you. So when we think about this analogy and we go back to this one, in my mind, liberation is not needing shoes because the ground is comfortable for all. Okay? That's what it is for me. To me, love and time have always found its ways of reminding us of what's most important. Love and time, right? Love and time are the greatest teachers because love and time are what we want. We can never have enough love. We can never have enough time. So while we have the time that we have in this incarnation, let's love as best we can. And to me, liberation is the ultimate form of love because I love you enough to say you do you, however that shows up. And storytelling is one of the ways that we can start the process. And that's what equity is, to get to an equal plane, ultimately, where we no longer need any of the things that tend to define us in our current state. So strive for liberation, and storytelling is a way that we can get there. So I will leave you with this. This is why I call it the lion side, because it's based on this Zimbabwean proverb. Until the lion tells his, hers, or their side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. If you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And in most cases, it's not going to be to your benefit. So take this opportunity to heed these words. Your story matters. Your life matters. You're worthy of love. You are enough. So please, for the love of all that is holy, tell your story. Encourage other people to tell their story. Encourage them to tell their truth, because when we all share our truth, we get the truth. All right. So thank you for dealing with my technical challenges. These are ways to keep up with me. I will be honest, seeing the way that Twitter is going, I wouldn't even bother reaching out to me that way, but it's there. But I look forward to any connections that may happen because of this. Thank you for your time and your patience. This was a great way to spend a Friday evening here in Baltimore. Go with love. Utilize the time that you have. And again, thank you to Tilt for this opportunity to share a little bit of my story. Peace.